Hello there guys, and welcome to Mad Doc Minis. In this video I'm going to be making some scatter terrain to represent a supply depot for the Imperium in Warhammer 40,000. I start off with these plastic toy pallets and sand those down on one side to get rid of the kind of wood texture, because I want them to be metal, you know, kind of more sci-fi looking things. And then I cut out a little bit of this stitching mesh. This is quite large grade stuff. You may want to use a smaller grade to make it a little more scale appropriate, but this is fine for my purposes. I cut that out to a neat square and then super glue that on top of the pallet as you see here. At this stage, I felt that it was a good idea to try and break these things apart to make modelling and painting a bit easier. So I just literally pried them apart, no finesse really, and a couple of little pins, attachment pins, did break in the process. That wasn't a huge drama because it's all going to go back together nicely at the end. And that's going to make it an awful lot easier to deal with. Particularly for painting actually, but there's also an advantage to this, as you'll see later on, for one of the ideas that I have. I then decided to prime the whole thing black, apart from the underside. I didn't see much sense in that, and that's kind of a nice kind of, you know, primer, because remember, these are kind of plastic toys, they're not going to take paint very well, so I always begin these kind of conversions with some kind of primer to start off with. But I am going to keep them separated for now, and you'll see why a bit later on. It's a good opportunity at this stage if you're doing anything like me here. I know you might not have the same palettes, but it's a good time to do any painting, because you don't want to paint the palettes after you've put kind of loads on them. So I actually take the opportunity to paint the insides of them as well at this stage and get all that done. I then started to think about what I could put on the pallets as cargo. These are Lego wheels glued in a square formation with super glue. They fit perfectly on one of the pallets, as you can see here. You could actually leave them unglued if you wanted extra versatility. As it is, I'm going to secure mine down. These are also Lego wheels, more of a sci-fi type. They look like futuristic containers to me, so they're going to get glued onto another pallet like so. Next up, we've got these Stormhawk Interceptor engines. They've been lying in my bits box for years, and it's nice to use them in this project now. They're going to present quite eye-catching and interesting cargo loads on a couple of the pallets. Next up, we've got this component here, which is part of a radiator or a tap or something left over from building work in the past. I chucked it into my bits box, and now I'm going to use it as a large piece of machinery or something on one of the pallets. Along similar lines, I'm going to use the end of a hose pipe here to represent a large industrial component of some type to go on one of the other pallets. At this stage, I decided to paint up what I had already built, although there's more to come. The Lego wheels actually look a hell of a lot better with a lick of paint. Now, I know you can tell what they are, I get it, but I don't mind that. I actually think it's quite fun when you can tell where things have come from with conversion work and terrain. I don't have a problem with that, like many do. And the paint job, as you can see, probably leaves a lot to be desired. Very low standard of painting here, guys. Sorry about that. But I was very pleased with these loads here with the rubber bands. These are small blue rubber bands, and I just fed those through the gap in the pallet whilst I still had them in two pieces, and that allowed me to feed them through and stretch them over the cargo. And I think they look like big industrial straps. Now, I went for blue ones because I thought, well, that looks a little bit more convincing rather than the normal rubber band colour. There's actually a cobweb in there still. Oops. So maybe there's a big xenomorph spider in there waiting to bite someone's head off. I don't know. But this is the radiator component. You can see that you can actually twist those little spirals out of the band if that happens to offend you. They're very easy to get rid of. If you just do a little bit of a twisting and pulling around, you can get rid of those quite easily. You can see the big blob of hot glue there. So very low tech, guys. Not going to win any awards, as I said, but I had a great time building these bits and pieces. I was particularly pleased actually with the engines. I think they make really interesting and unique cargo loads, and I'm going to actually make those look a little bit better again with some transfers later on, as you'll see. But yeah, really pleased with them. They look really handsome, and they're just interesting to look at, I think. So whilst I was on a roll, I did a couple of other bits as well. I found these underwater toys in a toy shop for very cheap, and I bought a load of them. They look like big bombs. They got LEDs inside, which I'm not going to actually make use of. That's just kind of part of the toy. And I made these sub-assemblies for the bombs to sit on using Foamex and bits of Lego all chopped up and glued together. And that's like a kind of cradle or transportation pallet, especially for the bombs there, and that fits in there nicely, and that's all going to get painted up, as you'll see in a minute. But those sci-fi wheels that I used earlier on, those Lego wheels, I had a huge load of those from a big job lot I bought ages ago on eBay. So I decided to glue a load together in big kind of like piles really, and they are going to provide some extra terrain for me for very, very little effort. Once they're all painted up, they look quite good. So speaking of that, let's move on to the final footage. You can see here it's all been painted and put together. It looks, I think, quite good for comparatively low effort. I'm really pleased with how all this turned out. So if you've enjoyed the content, guys, please consider liking and sharing. It really does help the channel to grow. And if you're not already subscribed, consider giving us a sub. Thanks ever so much for the support, and I will catch you in another video soon. Cheers.